Okay. Welcome again to another HR Science session. Today we have Mindy Honcoop. Hello, Mindy.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So Mindy, she's the founder and also fractional people leader and advisor at Agile in HR, a
Mhm.
consulting company based in Austin, Texas. And we are going to discuss how to use a human-centered design framework to optimize organizational capabilities. So now, Mindy, I know that I have made such a very short introduction about you, but I'm giving you the chance right now to share more about yourself, including what you do, and probably you want to share with us about how you decided to start your own company.
Oh, wow. Those are such good, big questions. So just briefly, Mindy Honcoop, I was an HR professional and leader for over 20 years prior to starting Agile in HR. I came out of my last kind of in-house chief people officer position in the end of 2021. And I just was, kind of looking for that next full-time job. I never thought that I would start a fractional business or own my own company. I feel like I kind of fell into it. While I was interviewing full time, I started just kind of to do some side projects. I had some people that I knew that were interested in working with me, and that ended up being more of what I was doing than interviewing. And interviewing ended up becoming advising conversations. And when someone ended up hiring me to be their advisor and they hired a more junior chief people officer, I think that was kind of that really opened up a door into a world that I didn't know existed and was available to me. So it's been an exciting journey. I think our landscape of work has changed so much, and the HR profession has been needing to change and is starting to change, and it's exciting to be able to be a part of that.
Wow, wow. Such a long journey that you have as well, yeah, Mindy?
Yeah. Yeah. I've started my work as in HR from the social work lens. So I went to the University of Washington. I chose the University of Washington. It was ranked at the time third in the nation for their social work program, and you have to go through internships in order to graduate. And I had planned to do my plus 1 year to be able to then graduate with a master's, but it was through my senior year internship that I realized the need through a variety. If anyone wants to talk to me about that experience, please reach out. But through a variety of circumstances, I realized the need for the social work lens within the world of work, and really saw the opportunity to do that within HR. And I always loved technology, and I was in Seattle. Technology was in my background, and so landed my first job at Microsoft, and so it's kind of started from there.
Wow. Okay. So, Mindy, because we are going to discuss about organizational capabilities, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I believe that this is one of your favorite
yeah.
topic
It
that
is.
you
It
talk about.
is. Yep, it is,
Since
Vanessa. And I think, organizational capability, and I'm almost glad you're kind of starting with that question, because it's really like, how do we define that? I
mm,
often think,
yeah,
when I speak with founders and executives, they're thinking about organizational capability from process and systems, and they don't often connect the dot back to people.
yeah,
And organizational capability is how are we creating effectiveness and functionality if we're not thinking about the people? The people are at the center of that. And
mm,
so yes, that is what is kind of like one of the main things that I do with Agile and HR and my clients.
interesting, interesting. So when you say organizational capabilities, I believe that half of the people in here also still learning about the HR. But if
Yeah.
you could take a step back, if you could take a step back,
Yeah.
probably you want to share with can you share what is exactly organizational capabilities and why
Yeah.
do you think it's important?
Yeah. So when I really look at the ecosystem of work, when I go into a workplace, and when we look at organizational capability from that kind of holistic lens, it's for me really like, how are we thinking about the alignment and the investment of our time and resources, really when we're thinking about the strategy, like are we even existing as an organization? How have we, built that foundation of how we work through people, process, and systems? And so, often when we're thinking about, coming together, starting a business, and, what is our why? What is the purpose that we're serving in this company? And then how are we delivering that service or that, whatever our why that we exist? We're doing something, right? We're building something, we're creating something. And I'm probably not articulating this in the best way. But whatever that why is, we're bringing people together to be able to work together to make that possible, to be able to deliver, let's say it's a service to that end consumer or customer. And how we do that work, often, when we think about organizational capability, we are thinking about from those, what systems do we need to make that work happen? What are the processes? Like, how do we create those standard operating procedures for how we're working? But we also miss the people element. Like, how are we asking the people to work with these systems and these tools and in this standardized way? How are we thinking about the people that we're bringing into the organization? How, when we change something about how we work, how are we thinking about, the people who are actually doing the work? Did we ask them about how they're working each day and take the feedback from those actual individuals and incorporate that into understanding the true problem that's happening of why we might need to change? And maybe that's, we need to purchase a new system, or we need to tweak some of those standard operating procedures. Were they involved? Was their voice involved in the decision to make the change and how we changed it? It's really the kind of that root, when you're thinking about the strategy and, and really the solutions and how are we solving problems at work, it is, how are we holding both the people, the processes, and systems equally? When are we thinking about those three things? Are we asking, if we're going to make this change to this tool, how do we think about then adjusting the process, but also the people impact?
Okay. Wow.
Hopefully that makes sense. I wanted to go in a little bit deeper and kind of give some examples, because I do think, when people say, when they connect it back to people, they're like, okay, well, are you talking about payroll and benefits? It's often when we think about HR, we're thinking about unfortunately, just from the tasks and activities of work. When we think about, work, we're there for a reason. There's a strategy. There is, as a business, there's a strategy. There should be, hopefully, a clear strategy around what we're doing, and that's that North Star, right? And if we're doing these activities and these tasks, and it's a finance person, they're going to have a very clear tie back to, oh, we're doing this because of this business strategy or this initiative that we need to achieve. But how often when we talk with an HR person, we ask them about these tasks and activities, that they're able to clearly articulate how those things are then tying back to how it's fueling those business strategy. Often when I'm working, I mentor a lot of young first time HR leaders, and they're like, oh, but we have these 30 initiatives but they're not tied to people. And I was like, really? Let's rethink that. Let's go back and think, how can we tie our people business activities and tasks and rethink that and tie them to how they drive those initiatives? Because I bet they are. They are, because, and if they're not, then we need to ask, why are we doing these things?
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about the strategic and the purposes, it also resonates me about asking the right question for the organization in the way that where this organization wants to go, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you see about that?
I love what you're saying, right? Because I think that is a question. Like, where are you looking to go? Like, where are you at today, first of all? Often we don't even know the own current state. We've gotten so often, I talk with leaders, and not just HR leaders, when I talk with business leaders, they are moving super quick. They're kind of focusing and they're pivoting, and they've gotten kind of almost lost. They don't realize what is the current state of your organization, what is a day in the life of an employee in the different roles of your company? What are the skills required to do the current work? Often we've gotten kind of disconnected from that. And we're seeing that in the data, right? We're seeing employees feeling more and more disconnected. They don't have role clarity. They don't understand how their work is driving that business impact. And so it's sometimes about taking a step back and understanding, okay, leaders, do we actually understand how we're accomplishing work today and where we're heading? Because I don't think that's often clear either. Sometimes they think they have a strategy, but they haven't clearly articulated that, or it's changing every month. And sometimes maybe that's okay. Maybe they're like, maybe what they were doing and they've been around for a while isn't working anymore. And they're having to test and learn. And they're having to figure out what is that new pivot we need to take. But how then are you communicating that back to your employees and say, actually, we don't know right now. And that's okay. But this is why we're testing and learning this. And it may feel that we're having to shift some different levers here quickly, but we're going to test and learn quickly. And we're going to, as a team together, figure this out. But it's going to feel a little bit wonky at first before we figure out what that new direction is. And I think it's about how do we get clear and like helping leaders get transparent in a healthy way. If there's an unhealthy level of transparency, to be able to help create that clarity of direction. But it's really about understanding, okay, current state, in order to then inform, okay, what is your future desired state? So then we can create that pathway of how we get from where we're at today to where we want to be. And how do we bring everyone along for that?
Okay. So when you want to create the future state, is it also related to competitive advantage that the organization might have?
Yeah, exactly, Vanessa. I love that, because those questions are often being held with our executive teams, and often our HR leaders may not be in those conversations. And so this is where they may be thinking about this strategy, about where are they wanting to head, and they're thinking about how do we operationalize those ideas? And they may be thinking about the processes and the tools to operationalize it. But then with the absence of that people leader being in those strategic conversations, they're missing that people part. And so they start to like operationalize these ideas. And then they realize at some point, the people is becoming a blocker to success. And then they're going to the HR person often, from my experience, is just from my experience. And obviously this may be different in different industries. I come from primarily a tech industry. So apologies to anyone in the audience if this doesn't ring true for your industry. This is just from my experience here, that the HR leader then is asked, hey, we have this problem. We started down this path. Help us fix this. And then this poor overburdened HR person is then trying to do their best to then catch up and kind of cleaning up, right? Cleaning up behind this decision that was made. That, can you imagine if they were in the strategic conversation to begin with, they could have started asking, hey, this sounds great. I love this idea, but how does this fit in with some of the other things that we're doing? Or is this going to require a new skill set for the organization? Because I don't feel like we have that right now. We don't seem to have that role today, is what I'm hearing you say. So it's going to take a while to hire that position. And so what are we going to do in the meantime if you're already going to be going to market with this new thing by X date, but we don't have the skill set for that? Like, and is that realistic to then hire that skill set within that short amount of time? And so these are the types of questions and conversations that when we put an HR leader early on in those strategy conversations, organizational capability, the people aspect becomes very powerful.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. And as now I believe that more and more company sees that HR has more space and more place, more seat in the meeting room when it talks about this more strategic things. But there are still organizations that neglect or maybe left the HR behind. And we think that why it happens and
Why does it
everything.
happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Vanessa, that's a $1 million question.
Question.
I am how can we not see the importance of this, right? And man, I think there's so many, reasons. And it's a complex answer. I've been, people have been asking me this, and often from my experience, it's they you can see like founders and CEOs who are under some real pressure from their investors or their board around having to make some really tight decisions around their budget and the finances. And unfortunately, it could look in some organizations, if they've been investing in their people teams, and if they're not seeing that change in engagement, and if they're not seeing that level of results from those investments, it could feel like this isn't important. But were we using the right data metrics to be able to show engagement? Were we asking, or were we using data at all to be able to show the value of our people investment? Were we speaking to a way that showed that strategic difference, or were we just looking at it as business activities and tasks? It's really easy to cut out business activities and tasks. I always say, how can we be ripping out these HR things, but you're not just ripping out your sales force, because they're thinking about the sales force tied to the revenue. And so if we are able to shift that narrative and really start talking about our people tech stack, our people investments as the flow of revenue, as tied to driving revenue, then you have a harder time just, not taking these people out, like being, you see senior HR leaders that are being, let go after the large layoffs that are happening. And you see more junior HR people left in place. And so I think, that's where but you have these leaders that have such pressure on them to make these quick decisions, and we're all human, right? We're all human. It's easy to say this is a bad leader, that was a bad decision, but none of us are perfect. And when you're in a really tough place, and if you haven't seen great HR, if that's just not, if you don't know what good looks like, it's hard to go there, right? And so that's why I think this is such a sensitive question, and I don't want to point fingers at anyone either in that. And I think it's about, how do we start to change the narrative and kind of reshift and rethink, and that's what my hope is in the work that I do. And I see someone has a hand raised. I talk too much, so I would love to stop talking.
Okay, go ahead, Nidhi.
All right. So sorry for interrupting. I'm connected with two of my devices because my laptop microphone is not working.
Oh,
yeah. Hi, Mindy.
hey.
I am a cohort. I'm in the same cohort as Vanessa. We're all in the same cohort. And I think what Vanessa, the question you asked, Vanessa, and I think the answers you're giving, Mindy, it completely resonates, because I feel just to answer the question, I think the business acumen in the HR leaders, I feel, is missing that single piece, where I find that most of the seats are not given to the HR folks. Is because I think we all need to develop that business acumen on how we can uh, bring people and convert that people into data and present to the stakeholders. So I think I just wanted to add that piece, which reminded me of learning in the class.
Yeah. I love that. That is definitely one of the factors, right? That is one of the things that I would agree that, in the busyness, when you are looking at tasks and activity, and in just the amount of manual work that often is going on within, and trying to just keep up with compliance, and we've reduced our HR teams to be very lean, and it is hard. It is hard to realize that you've gotten into your day-to-day and that you've forgotten, you've kind of lost touch with that holistic layer of really what is that flow of revenue at the organization. How is this company making money? That's like kind of the first step when I'm mentoring the HR leaders is, really thinking about what's that first question? What is that next step, Mindy, that I can take? I was like, if you don't know the answer to how your company is making money, that's a great first place to start. And don't be afraid to ask that question, and go to trusted people within the organization that can start answering that. And if you start getting different answers to that question, that means you're not the only one. I joined a company. That's one of the first questions I always ask as a chief people officer. And I was talking to business leaders, like the outside of HR, and they each, in one organization, they each had a different answer to that question. And I was like, oh, this is like an opportunity here for us to really like dig in. And a lot of change had been going on. And here's a level of where we should probably get alignment as a leadership team.
Yeah, you're right. And with that, since I remember that you also had a podcast a few years ago, right, Mindy, about how to ride a new bicycle of work. And you talk
yes.
Remember that podcast?
I do. Wow, that was a long time ago. You did your research. I've had a lot of podcasts, so that's impressive.
Yeah, that was one of your podcasts, and it also remind me about the message in here that you were pointing out about how to be empathized in business, how to be empathized is back in the business again. And since we are talking about the organization capabilities in here, you focus it on more about people itself. What do you think that it might connect it with the organization capabilities by using that empathy?
Yeah, and that's where I love human-centered design, is because using that framework gets you back to understanding who are the humans in this organization, and speaking to them and understanding the different personas so that you can empathize. Because to be empathic, we need to understand who are the humans. We need to have meaningful connection. We need to have that two-way flow of conversation. We need to listen. We need to not just be telling people what to do. We need to like open up the door and invite our employees in to co-designing the experience of work. And so that's the power of human-centered design, to be able to be empathic. And I think a lot of people hear, I think a lot of leaders hear us use the word people, and then they think either this is fluffy or this isn't business acumen. And so it's also about trying to understand, where is that leader coming from, and why is the word people not resonating for them? Because people is strategic. Like, it isn't fluffy. And if we do have strong business acumen and we have good data, we can be able to articulate the importance of why people is not fluffy, and why we have to take the time to think about the people impacts of our decision, and how that actually helps us become more profitable. And that people aren't a spend, that people are an investment. And that even in, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money either to do this. Because if you think about anything around change management is you're going to be having to change the levers of people and how they behave around that change. And change is hard for humans. And if you are asking your humans to do even a small change, you're going to need to understand, like, to be the most successful with that change, if you're actually thinking about ahead of time, okay, this change is going to happen. How much other change is in the organization? How much am I asking my people to do? And if I'm just thinking about, a change management plan and a communication plan that supports that, as we're even designing or thinking about what it is that we're going to be asking people to do differently, like that's a people initiative. Like that we're not just talking about benefits and payroll. This is like in just the strategy here. And so when people they're like, but Mindy, that's not HR. I'm like, no, that is HR. That is like what it can look like. That is like how we're even talking about change management here. And so it's interesting the different perspectives that people have of what value HR can bring. And when we talk about organizational capability, their definition of what does that mean to connect back to the people.
Yeah. And as you say that, more and more organization probably neglect the fact that they have to invest in people. Sometimes they invest more in the system itself, like
yes,
IT technology,
yes,
and AI, machine learning is coming.
Yeah,
and it's being abruptly applied in many organizations. Do you
right?
think right? Do you
Yes.
think like significant shifts like in organizational capabilities that we need to anticipate that?
Well, I think you already you're starting to articulate that very well when you're thinking about digital transformation. This is happening in almost every organization, digital transformation, digital workplace strategy. And how often is the HR person co-shaping that digital workplace strategy? Very rarely. They're thinking about it from process and systems. Our employees today are all the systems. And if we think about AI, if we don't have a company-wide AI strategy that includes the thought of people in it, like we already have these digital workplace strategies that are so disconnected. Like how many passwords do we have to remember to log into things? Yes, we have some single sign-on, but not all the tools have that. And our information is within all these disparate systems. And which one was that again? And how long does it even take for a poor employee to be multitasking and understand, oh, I got to do that. Oh, I just got a Slack here. Oh, now I need to go do this. And we know, especially in the academic world, every time we ask to task switch, the lack of focus that we have, that reduces our ability to be productive. Because every time we're switching, we're losing time, and we have to put that thought. We're reducing the quality of the output of our work. And with the AI, yes, AI can be great. It can be super helpful. But if it's in all these non-native AI tools, then how are all these different bots and agents even talking to each other? Because the systems are disconnected. And so how it's almost imperative for us to think about with our digital workplace strategy. If when I tell HR, when I talk with HR, sorry, not tell, that's a bad word to use. When I'm guiding HR through some of these initial conversations, one of the things is are you involved in these conversations? If you're not, don't wait for the invitation. Start knocking on that door now to get ahead of it, to start asking the questions of these leaders before they go make these purchasing decisions. Start asking those people impacting questions, because then you're going to start opening up a whole new holistic lens of digital workplace with organizational capability. If you're putting the people investment into those conversations, wow, your workplace, you're unlocking magic. Because if you get that right at your workplace versus your competitors, you're going to have the advantage, because now you've unlocked AI in a way that employees have spoken into, with connected systems that are talking to each other with a clean data lake. And we've thought about how is this going to impact the day-to-day roles of people and how we're skilling and reskilling people for that. And we actually might be able to keep the people and rethink the new jobs that go along with our AI investment. Wow, that's exciting. Some people are like, oh, that's utopia, Mindy, but is it? Why can't it be? Why can't it be?
Yeah, yeah. And when you speak about um, the people that you are going to focus in here, but it doesn't mean that system and process is not important as well, right?
That's right. No, they're equally important. They're equally important. Those three things are the pillars to organizational capability. Or you can think about it as the intersection of those three things is organizational capability.
Yeah, yeah. And one of my friends from Sydney also posted something in the LinkedIn that says not everything is about speed. So when organization nowadays, they are investing more in AI and technology, and as you say, for productivity, for more like a faster result, for more high quality products. But there is another part, like another poll that says not everything is about the speed. What do you say?
Oh, such a hard question to answer. And because but I do think that if we want to move quickly, we need to have agility in an organization. But if we haven't done the due diligence of thinking about building a strong foundation from an organizational capability standpoint of equality across our people, process, and systems, we often have created very static frameworks, and that actually slows us down from being able to be faster. And if we're thinking about iteration and continuous improvement, which requires really good change management practices and muscle and resiliency, if we've thought about the people in building this as an organization, and it's building muscle and the behaviors within us as humans to have that resiliency, to adapt to change well. And if we've built a culture at our work of that, then we can move faster. But we have to have a healthy pace of that speed, because we also need to think about how the capacity of the people in our organization to be at the speed that we need to be at to remain a viable organization. And if we're thoughtful about the people and the workforce planning and the type of skills that we need and the number of those, then and we've made those decisions as thoughtful as we can. I mean, things happen all the time that are unexpected. I mean, the world is happening around us, right? It's not controlled. There's so many unexpected things, and we can only do the best that we can to be thoughtful about it, because things are going to happen. But even in this change resilient organization that I'm speaking to, when something like in the world happens that's a surprise and we have to shift, it is those organizations that took a little bit of time to slow down to build the capability that are going to be able to withstand the surprises that happen. They're going to be the ones that are more long-term, like resilient, that thrive through disasters. We see these in like organizations like I think I'm going to say Torani syrups, the coffee syrups, that they have never in the many years that company has existed ever done a layoff.
Yeah.
Through tons of economic challenges. Now, that makes you question. You look at those organizations and say, what were they doing differently? And when you talk with you see the leaders that from the organization like that, they said, our people were never not an investment. We always saw people as an investment, and that was in every decision we made.
Yeah. Have you ever, maybe you want to share with us with your experience as well, like maybe in one industry, because there are lots of areas of industries, but maybe some industry that you want to give an example about, they have doing very well in building their own organizational capabilities, especially in focusing on more people in there.
Always have a hard time with this question because there's no perfect company, and then if you pick it out, I feel like, oh, I'm gonna there's gonna be something, and I've highlighted this company, and someone's gonna unearth something that I didn't know about that isn't healthy, because there are organizations, I think, that kind of had, like the Torani Syrup Company was a recent company that kind of, I heard the CEO speaking about kind of their legacy. And I thought that was, I loved that, and how they, you know, they were talking, the CEO was talking about how even, you know, going through business school, they were very challenged to, from a financial perspective, that it was against what they were taught to think about people as an investment, but they chose to think about that differently. And they truly believe that the success of that, longevity of that company, was a result of that. We also, you know, you look at organizations like Patagonia, and we think about how they, you know, obviously took a very different perspective, but also became very were supported people in their culture to even lobby situations and to change legal, like FMLA, if I remember right, and maybe I read this wrong, but they were one of the, Patagonia helped bring about FMLA in the US, if I remember reading that article correctly. And they were one of the first organizations to have daycare, and to really think about how are we supporting the families in our organization to thrive. I mean, I think we probably have other companies, and maybe even in this call, that people can like shout out and highlight. I know the companies that I've worked at, while they're not perfect, I definitely, because we can learn what not to do from a company as well as what to do. And so there's also parts of organizations within these larger companies that are healthy, as with a larger company maybe is a mix. But so, and often it goes down to the leadership of that organization, and how has that leadership really thought about the values and the culture and the people and woven that into everything they've done. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question. I kind of danced around it because I think, yeah,
it's okay, it's okay. Also, Melissa comment as well in the chat that saying that organization is right or wrong, but maybe she also provide us with Dr. Brenner's practices in here. And we have
awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna take a look at that.
We have a question.
Limit. Oh, sorry, just 2 points on it.
No, it's okay.
They have a limit on the gap between the highest paid executive and the lowest paid employee. I'd never seen that before. And then they've got like kind of expanded benefits, like you were talking about childcare, and we know fertility benefits were a huge thing a few years ago, and
yeah,
and they're kind of like, they have an interesting history. They have an interesting like justice kind of thing, and
yeah,
were popular at the same time that society was starting to talk about like what is in our products and where are our consumer product laws.
I love that.
So
it's really great,
like a holistic.
Yeah, and I love that. But to get to that level, like, and this is why I love looking at companies like this. And if you really dig down deep, they have to know who their employees are. You know, the companies that often will just check a box, okay, we have this, and they just have the kind of more generic benefits. They've really thought about who is the type of employee we want to retain and attract, and really thought about how do our benefits as a strategy to do that, because they're not just seeing it as a task or activity, they're seeing it as a strategy to retain and attract the talent that then aligns to the values and the type of work that they're doing and their why of existing and their culture. And they've done a really good job of thinking about pay is also then a strategy, and weaving that in. And so I think when we start to see these, they're using frameworks like HCD to always be rethinking who are the people here, how do we support them or don't support them, and how do we reflect that then back into how do we keep our benefits fresh and up to date, and making sure that they're really helping support the humans in their organization at the moments that matter through that employee journey.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question from John Kelly.
Yeah.
Actually. He would like to know more about your perspective on organization design of the HR team. For example, that he said a few weeks ago, they just had a presenter who proposed moving employee experience out of HR. Interesting. What do you, so how does you define what should be in HR and how would you set up the team?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question too. And I also think it depends on the organization. And I know like they hate it when HR says it depends, but I think gone are the days of where we just cut and paste what we did in one place and like slap it on to all the other places that we've been. We really need to, like we were talking about, like really think about that organization, their current state, and how and what are they doing and how are they doing it, and then really shaping then, you know, maybe it does make sense in that organization to have HR structured very differently, and that will work. But then you also have to think, you know, how do we continue to evolve that structure as the company evolves? And so I don't think there's any one answer to how should we structure an HR team. Because I've also seen in smaller organizations of like 40 people where they have a really strong chief of staff that has built up. They've realized from an organizational capability standpoint the importance of people, and they're doing a phenomenal job of being that people mindset for that 40-person company. And then the day-to-day HR, like strategic, they've thought about it's not business activities and tasks. They have truly thought about it as an investment. And so the operational things that have to happen from a compliance standpoint and that sort of thing, the chief of staff does oversee, but it's co-shaped. So it's co-owned, because when you really look at the employee journey in the experience, because employee experience is the outcome of how do I as an employee come to work? What is my experience with with the tools that I'm using to do in my job? And that my experience is a result of how is it to work one-on-one, to speak with people, but also how is it to work with the tools that I'm given to do my job? And so I could see how employee experience in some organizations may have to sit in a different spot. They may have to be, you know, cross-functionally working with the IT person, but it's employee experience shouldn't just sit in one spot. Like you really are co-shaping that employee experience, co-owning with other stakeholders, because IT has such an impact on the employee experience. And so do other parts of the business, depending on what industry this is. And so I love that question, but it depends answer, and should be designed thoughtfully and have the ability to rethink it.
Yeah, agree with that, Mindy, because it's actually also happened in several company where probably they put DE&I division out of the HR, and the answer is probably it also depends on what the organization purpose, right? And also when we are talking about the people analytics, right? When we are talking about HR analytics, some of the organization put it under the organization of HR, but some of them also put it under the other C levels. So wow, that's an interesting question.
Especially when you think about employee experience, like in a manufacturing, is so much also around safety of work, and so how is that safety team a part of that conversation? And so great question.
Okay. And Mindy, actually I have a personal questions waiting for other people to ask question for you. So I have an interesting question that we now entering the world where organization trying to be agile, you know. I mentioned earlier in our discussion to be agile, to rapidly learn new things. But do you believe that in the future there will be the capability as well for the organization to unlearn something? Because unlearn something is like the terms that our professor always talking about at an NYU.
And I think we were talking kind of about it without saying unlearning. I do love the thought of unlearning, because we have to, in change management, we have to unlearn how we were doing something to put on something new. So, you know, in change management, whereas we are asking people to do something different, that's going to require new habits, new behaviors to be done. And we're going to have to unlearn some things in order to learn these new things. And it is hard. If we think about it just from a habit level, it is so hard to unlearn a habit and
Yeah.
and to put in something different, and for that to become like second nature, and for us to like be, but we should always, the thing is, what I love about change resilient organizations, they've embraced iteration, and that's, I mean, for me, that's true agility. And we're always thinking about how do we get better, so we never create a best practice, because that's always evolving and changing. And so as we start to think about, I always like to think about as microdosing change throughout the organization, because once you've started to get used to something, it's gotten comfortable, and that feels so good. But if we are built to change resiliency and agility in, then we should be thinking about, oh, but what could be better? What is a better way? It's testing and learning, and then taking that learning into the next microdose of change, so that we're always kind of baby stepping. And it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we're unlearning how to be comfortable, and we're relearning almost like how to be in a constant state of just, but then maybe you could be challenged to say that then being uncomfortable is that new comfortable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And because I think that everybody, like every person, also including organization, they have their own limited capacity, you know,
Yeah.
in learning something. So
Yes.
sometimes they have to, okay, I think I have to unlearn something to make it space for something new, so I can learn new things.
And I love how you talk about that, because in then the people planning of that change, we have to remind our leaders, okay, if we're going to be doing this, we're going to have to be asking people to stop doing something where they're going to have to unlearn. So we have to give them time to unlearn while they're learning. So I almost love that. I haven't thought about it like that. I may have to take that away. I may have to steal that one, and incorporate that into what I talk about. That's really brilliant.
Sure, would love to. So, oh, they have a question. Okay, Joshua, you have a question?
Yeah, Vanessa. Hi, Mindy. I'm really intrigued
Hey.
for today. Yeah, pardon me for not opening my camera due to my internet connection is unstable at the moment. So, yeah, I'm Joshua and currently studying human capital management at Columbia University.
That's
And
awesome.
ask about the rise of the gig economy. So, as we know, many organizations are increasingly relying on freelancers and short-term contractors. And this approach offers flexibility and cost savings, but it also presents challenges. The significant one is ensuring that these temporary workers understand and embody the company's value, which is crucial for maintaining a consistent organizational culture, and also ensuring high quality work, given the transition nature of freelance work. So I want to ask, how can we ensure that our company's value are embedded in their mindset? And also, what strategies can we employ to effectively manage and guide them in their responsibilities?
Oh, such a beautiful question. That's so good, especially depending on what industry you're talking about. Like if we're thinking about in manufacturing and the talent shortages that we have, sometimes those gig workers are those temporary, like even think about travel nurses. They're so like needed just to make sure people get access to care. And yeah, you're right. That's so hard for the workers and supervisors if they're kind of constantly plugging in and new people, and how do we onboard them quickly? Do we have the ability to onboard these gig workers, or not, or freelancers? Do we have the ability as they come and go? How are we informing them about the work that's being done, about what this company is, about that impact to the customer service, especially if we're talking about in nursing, and what is that level of care and quality, and how do you do nursing in that place versus in another place? And so it's almost like, how do you pre-vet that talent? And maybe you keep them, is there a way to be able to keep them on call when needed? Or, you know, you may not need them all the time. Like, is there a different way we can think about how we use freelancers, how we onboard them? How can they feel like a part of the organization and really love being there? Is there a way to do that? Maybe there is a way to do that. If we start to think about them as, they're also, you know, if they are coming in and for a short project, how are we also then informing our full-time workers about this person and the work that they're doing and how to work together? It's almost, if we think about, like, let's say about mini onboardings, and we often don't think about, even in onboarding a full-time person, about our current staff. And how is our work going to change as they welcome in this new person? This is like a very interesting question, because I do think it's a necessity for organizations to be able to continue to be able to produce what it is that they're doing, or to serve the population that they're serving. I think also we could think about, in a positive light of freelancers, is that we actually may not need a full-time person for a job. We actually, as a company, if we're pivoting, we may need someone to just come in and do that one thing, and we may not need that skill set again. So instead of hiring someone and then having to let them go because we just needed something to be done in 6 months, this is a great way, right, to be able to have someone come in that just likes doing that one thing, and be able to do that in a thoughtful way. But how might we be able to create the opportunity that person has a really specialized skill set? What a missed opportunity by not giving access to other people that maybe want to learn that skill. Is there a way that they could even be mentoring within the short time that they're with us? Like, often with fractional work, that's kind of can be a benefit. Like, we may not need that person like full time, but wow, they could really coach and advise, and we could upskill while that person is also doing the work that we need to have done within that short period of time. Some different ways. I don't know if I exactly answered your question, because I think we're still figuring out how do we thoughtfully do that. But I think if we rethink some of the ways of being able to really create, really utilize freelancers, we might be able to get to a really great answer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mindy.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was a really great question.
Thank you, Joshua. So, Mindy, unfortunately, we come to an end.
I know. Went by
Great.
so fast. Well, you just
Yeah.
asked such great questions. It was such a refreshing conversation.
Yeah. And everyone in here also ask smart questions as well. So I feel like one of my favorite quote from you is people is also strategic. It isn't fluffy. So yeah. It's a great conversation with you we had in here, Mindy. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts about how to rebuild people with the area needed for organizations to thrive. And thank you for everyone too who participated in this event. Is there any last words that you want to share with us, Mindy?
Well, it's just such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love what you guys are doing and creating this learning community. I just so believe in it. And I'm sad that Tim wasn't able to be here too, but thank you guys for what you're doing and the positive impact that you're having within the world of work and within the HR community. It just means so much. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Thank you, everyone.